Hello and welcome to Console Cowboy. So today we're going to cover two tools that I find invaluable in my physical penetration testing kit, something that I use all the time, but you may or may not have in your kit or even thought about using. I'm going to cover some tips and tricks on using these and some gotchas, as well as give some stories on when these were valuable to me. So on the screen now, I'm going to put on some tools and we're going to go over it. I have some tools that you may or may not recognize. You probably recognize all of them if you do physical breach, but you might not have used some of them. So you've probably used a double door tool to open up some crash bars. You've probably used a gym tool to slip a latch, and you've probably used a traveler's hook potentially to pull a latch and turn it. But you've also recognized we have a crowbar here, and we have a blow up wedge here. And you might not have used those in your tests. I'm about to tell you why those are invaluable, how I've used them, and some tips and tricks on making them more effective when it doesn't seem like it's going to work. So, let's say first off, why you'd use those. Well, you might have this tool here, which has a nice rubber here, and it grips that crash bar well. It's a little bit thick, and you might not get it through the center of a door. So, in order to get it through the center of the door, if you have a little bit of space, you could just toss this wedge in there. So I was with a client one time that was like, hey, I'm a little concerned with this door. Would you be able to breach it? And I was like, yeah, sure. I pulled my pump right out. I create a little bit more space because I couldn't get it through the door because the rubber was gripping the door. I slipped it right through and pulled it. And the client just looks at me like, why do you have an air wedge on you? And he was pretty impressed. Next up, so let's say we have a sealed tight door where there's like no lip at all. It's a metal door. It doesn't seem like there's even any space at all, but you can slip this very thin crowbar into the frame, create like this much space, slip this guy in here, create this much space, and then you can get this tool through here or this traveler's hook through to slip the latch. Now, I ran into some situations at night where I walked up to a metal frame door. There was no space at all, but I was able to get this guy through here. Then my buddy, while I was holding it open a little bit, slipped this guy in here, created me some space. I was able to pull that crash bar and break in the middle of the night. Without those tools, there is no way we would have gotten into that facility. But there's a little bit of tips and tricks sometimes. So sometimes, and this is like the key thing that you need to understand, when you pump up that door, you're flexing the frame. And when you flex that frame like that, you're kind of putting pressure on the latches. And when you try to pull that crash bar, you might be pulling, and that crash bar is not releasing because this pump put pressure on the frame and is not allowing that latch to go. However, if you time it by pulling this onto the door frame, onto the crash bar, while you slowly release the pressure in this pump, as the pressure in the pump releases the pressure on the frame and the latch, this guy will slowly pull without having it catch on the door frame because it's too thick. And all in one, it'll just pop open on you. So that's just a crucial little tips and tricks on utilizing those tools that you might not realize until you're on site and you're like, why isn't this working? This crash bar should pull, but it's dead tight. If it's not locked, but there's too much pressure on the frame, you are going to have to do a little bit of timing there. So that's just an extra tip for you. But I would highly suggest just go to Home Depot, buy a little crowbar, buy a little wedge tool, and throw it in your bag for breach because you're going to use it quite often. I've used it on the last two engagements I was on for a full breach scenario in the middle of the night. No problem at all, quick in and out. And it was brilliant. And as well as the client is like, how did you get in? You show them a crowbar and a wedge, and they're like, what? So it's kind of a really cool setup. So hopefully that is useful for you. If it was, share this video out to other people and like and subscribe, and I will catch you later.